Hey everyone, and I hope you have all had a great week so far. Um, Welcome to my kitchen. A little bit of different spot today. I just happened to be here because I was just prepping some ground turkey for my kids for dinner tonight. So while I was doing that, I figured I would get this video done as well. Um, so um, this video is the first video in a series of videos that I'm going to create called Mastering the Basics. And just by what way of introduction, what I want to accomplish with this series of videos is basically my thought is that the basics, things around food, sleep, stress management, movement, exercise, and social connection really form the foundation of any health journey. And until we can master those things and get them to a place where they're pretty much 80% spot on most of the time, it's kind of hard to make progress and or sustain progress towards our goals for a long time and essentially for a lifetime. And I think a lot of the problems that people have is that they don't have a mastery of uh, the basics when it comes to health and wellness. So they can't really make the progress they want to make, or they can't sustain the progress that they're making because everything's built upon basically a shaky foundation. And even though I call this mastering the basics, I think the word mastery might just be a little bit misleading, although it sounds really good. Like I said, you have to hit the basics 80% of the time. And that just means that you have mastered the practices and discovered and done the work to find the patterns and habits that work for you within those basics. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect 100% of the time. It just means that you know how to self correct, how to self monitor, and how to essentially regulate the basics so that 80% of the time you're doing what you need to do. And the other 20% of the time, life happens, celebrations, you don't sleep, all those fun things that are part of life, right? Uh, we don't need mastery or perfection in order to make progress. We just need to do good enough. So with that said, the first topic that we are going to talk about in this series is everyone's favorite topic. Well, mostly everyone's favorite topic, which is food. And so food is very nuanced. I've spoken about this innumerable times in various different forms through the content that I put out. And that food, the right diet is a individualized approach. So I can't tell you exactly what the right diet is, but there are a lot of guidelines and basic rules, or not, I shouldn't call them rules, but basic principles that we pretty much see across the board will yield good results. And so, because this is mastering the basics, a lot of this is going to sound very simple. It's going to sound not sexy. It's not going to be like the cool new sexy thing. It's not the coolest news diet trend. But if you follow these things and incorporate them into your life, it's the first steps into getting to where you want to be and customizing your diet and finding the diet that works for you, whether that is a sexy new diet trend or it is just plain old basic whatever, like nothing sexy at all. And so the first thing we need to talk about when it comes to food is eliminating processed foods. And I say eliminating, and that might seem like there is no room for them at all. Obviously, I just said you need to be good. You need to hit these basics 80% of the time. So 80% of the time, you should not be eating processed foods. That means a majority of your diet should be coming from whole foods. And a, the best way, the simplest way to think about this, when you say, one next question would be, what are the foods that I should be eating in this whole foods diet? If you look at a typical grocery store, basically you're going to anything that's on the outer aisles of the grocery store is going to be fair game for you to eat. And some of those things might be good for you, some of those things might not be good for you just based on individualization, but any of that stuff is on the table, right? And that is things like animal products, chicken, steak, pork, fish, lamb, bison, shellfish, dairy products. Anything that comes out of an animal and is just a single ingredient item for the most part is going to be okay, right? So any and all animal products, I listed off a whole bunch there, but it could be anything you want. It could be rabbit, it could be duck, it could be anything that comes from an animal is just that one animal is all good. So um, that's probably the first thing. All fruits. So anytime you see a whole fruit that's not hasn't been processed, an apple that is an apple, an orange that is an orange, a banana that is a banana, a package of strawberries, a package of blueberries. Stay away from things that have been processed, right? So that means when you take a banana or an apple and you turn it into apple juice, yes, it's just apple juice and it is just from apples, but it is a highly processed form of an apple. There are many apples in a pack in a gallon, or I don't even know how you measure apple juice anymore, but there are many apples in that container. You could not eat all of those apples whole. So we want to stay away from as minimally processed as possibly can. So minimally processed vegetables, meaning it looks like the actual item. It looks like a apple. It looks like a zucchini. It looks like kale. It's not processed into, you're not taking 3 heads of kale and processing into some kind of drink. It looks like a carrot, that type of thing. So whole form foods of fruits and vegetables. Nuts and seeds are also fair game as long as you tolerate those nuts and seeds. Like I'm not saying if you have a nut allergy, go out and eat nuts, but if you do well with nuts and seeds, they are fair game. Again, you have to be careful with these nuts and seeds just because it's easy to overeat them. And if you're someone who's concerned about body composition, that might be a concern for you. But in the beginning, I'm not even really concerned about how much of these things you eat. I just want you to get to the point where these are 80% of your diet, right? So go to town, nuts and seeds, right? Nuts and seeds, they're butters. So if you have some kind of almond butter, peanut butter, uh, sunflower seed butter, whatever, those are all also fair game as well. Again, just make sure because they are processed that they don't have other things in them. It's easier to have sugars and those types of things thrown into um, nut butter sometimes, for example. Um, and then what do you drink? Water, coffee, tea. Preferably, again, without any kind of foreign substance in it. So if you want to throw some milk in it, great. You want to throw a little bit of stevia or monk fruit in it, great. Sweeten it up, that's cool. Stevia and monk fruit are natural sweeteners. If you want to throw some honey in your tea, okay, great, that's cool too. Or in your coffee or whatever. But just nothing like unnatural in those drinks. If you can tolerate it and you want to throw a teaspoon of sugar in your coffee and that's how you like to have your sugar, you want to put a little sugar cube in your coffee and that's just your thing, cool. I don't really care about that. Honestly, it's such a small amount. But for the most part, just, unprocessed things going in those waters and coffees. I prefer personally, we're not dumping a bunch of coconut oil and a bunch of butter in our coffee or tea. Um, that's kind of just a quick way to get a whole bunch of calories that you don't really need for the most part. So again, try to stay away from just like adding a whole bunch of stuff into your coffee and tea for the sake of it, because again, there's a lot of sexy things that are out there about doing those things, and this is the unsexy, unsexy mastering the basics. So just stick to coffee and tea with milk and some kind of sweetener if you like that. Could be almond milk, cashew milk, any kind of milk from a nut is also fine if you don't tolerate dairy. That's cool too. Um, if you're gonna, there are some decent packaged goods out there that are okay, but you have to read the labels, carefully, and make sure they also just contain whole food ingredients. Like if it just has some jerky, for example, it just has the animal product and you know sea salt and pepper, right? For example, right? I'm not saying that all packaged goods are off the table, but if you are going to buy a packaged good like that, for example, a can of tuna fish, like, or a can of salmon, or a tin of sardines, like these are all packaged goods, but they usually just have one, two, or three ingredients in them. So if there starts to be a humongous list of ingredients on this packaged food, chances are it's probably not good. If it has one, two, three, four, five ingredients, and you can read the names of those ingredients and you know exactly what they are, it's probably okay. And then as far as like oils that you can consume, cooking fats, those types of things, um, I'm not going to make crazy claims about vegetable oils. I think there's too much conflicting data about whether they're good, bad, or indifferent or whatever. Um, so personally, my approach to this is I always look for the most unprocessed thing of whatever I'm eating. So when I'm talking about oils, I know that olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil, those are minimally processed oils, and they work just as well as any kind of vegetable oil. And so I just stick with those because I'm just going to hedge my bets that those are probably better because they're less processed. If there is anything wrong with vegetable oils, and they do the job just fine. And so I'm sticking with the minimally processed oils. So I advocate just sticking to whatever is most natural, and avocado oil and coconut oil and olive oil seem to be some of the most natural oils that are out there. So I suggest you stick with the same. Um, and then any kind of animal fats out there, if you beef tallow or duck fat or chicken fat or pork lard or whatever, again, as long as it's coming from an animal and it's just the fat of the animal, go for that. If you like to cook some vegetables and that type of stuff, or sear some meat in that stuff, type of stuff, that's okay too. So basically, you're going to stick to those foods. Follow that for a few weeks. I don't care amounts. I don't care macronutrients. I don't care about anything. The first step, if you're eating a bunch of processed foods, is just get those processed foods out of your diet. And you're probably going to have to take and do this, and it's going to be a stumbling block, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to cave and eat, whatever at some point. Um, and so it's going to be a process. So give yourself a month of just trying to stick to eating whole natural foods, some of the foods that we talked about. The other number one tip I'm going to give, because I can talk about this all day, but I don't want to make these videos too long. The other number one tip when it comes to this step in mastering the basics around food is getting the processed foods out of your house. If at all possible, try to get the processed foods out of your house. So take them, throw them in the trash, give them away, donate them to a food bank, whatever. And get them out of your house, because if they're not in your house, you're not going to be tempted to walk over to the cabinet and get them and eat them. If the ice cream's not in the freezer, it's going to be much harder to eat it. You're going to have to go to the store and buy some and do it. Not that it's impossible to do, but it's much more difficult. There's another barrier in the way. And I also understand that there are families, you might be doing this by yourself. Other people in the house do not want to follow along with this, and that's a tougher situation. But as much as you can possibly do, try to find a way to take those processed foods that you might be tempted by and eliminate them from your field of view, where you are in the kitchen, that type of stuff. Like, have a specific cabinet that you do not go into, that you're not going to open up and look, oh, there's the package of Oreos. Oreos sound really good right now. I'm going to have some Oreos, right? So if you don't see them, you don't think about them, they're not there, tell your family to hide them in some place that you don't even know where they are. And as best as you can, kind of get them out of your environment. And that's going to be a huge step in trying to eliminate the temptation to have them. So with that, that is the first step in mastering the basics. And that is the first step in food. And we're going to dive into all kinds of other aspects of food. But the first and most impactful thing you can do around mastering the basics is to eliminate processed foods from your diet. As much as you possibly can. I'm not saying you're never going to have a processed food ever again in your life, but as best you can, especially in the beginning, try to get them out of your diet and out of your life and out of your environment as best you possibly can. So with that, I appreciate everyone watching these videos, and I hope that you enjoy this series. And if there are things that you want me to talk about within mastering the basics, please let me know. Leave me some comments, direct message me. That's always welcome. As always, if you want to keep up with the content that I'm going to put out in this series, and you're interested in it and you want to follow along, please go to my homepage, rjbhealth.coach. Click on the newsletter link at the top. Enter your email address, and I will email you every time I post a new video in the series, and you can follow along and master the basics and get these things done and be on your way to a healthier, happier life. And if you need help, if you really need some personalized coaching to get these things done, I also have spots available for one-on-one coaching. So please go to rjbhealth.coach. And then on my homepage, there is a button that says schedule a discovery call. Click that button, fill out the form, and we will chat some more about whether it would be a good fit to work together. And I hope you all have a good week. And I will talk to you all next week with part 2.